Okay, Ron?
Yes.
Thank you very much. Hi, everybody. Welcome to the July work session for the Talbot County Board of Education. It is 5:31, and we have a quorum present, so we're going to go ahead and get started. If everybody could stand up and say the Pledge of Allegiance, that would be great. Thank you. Do I have a motion to approve tonight's agenda?
I make a motion to approve tonight's agenda.
Second.
All those in favor? Any opposed? Okay, do I have a motion to approve the work session minutes from the previous month, which was June 15th?
I make a motion to approve the minutes from June 15th meeting.
I second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, and do I have a motion to approve the minutes from the special meeting, which was May 11th? Yeah, May 11th.
I make a motion to approve the minutes for May 11th.
I second that.
All those in favor? Any opposed? Okay, we're going to go ahead and get started with our work session, starting with new business, which is, first topic is an update about our blueprint.
Good evening, President Jackson, members of the board. So tonight, I chose some current highlights for our current implementation of the blueprint, and you have the slides that I'm getting ready to walk us through. I wanted to situate us sort of in the timeline. As you know, this fall, we participated in our progress monitoring because we are about halfway through, well, we are now halfway through the implementation of our current plan, which ends at the end of this coming school year. So we will be doing some revisions and updates to revise that plan for the 27-28. And at the same time, Maryland is undergoing their interim evaluation, and they are also doing their annual update to their comprehensive plan right now. And you should see that new plan for the upcoming school year by August 1st. And that will reflect the legislative updates, which I have linked to later in this presentation. So it's moving kind of quickly. We are halfway into this 10-year timeline, just about. All right, it changed on my computer, not on here. It changed, it advanced here, but not up there. Do you want to? Oh, was it just delayed? Okay. Okay, so as I said, I highlighted just a couple current things from each pillar here. And just a reminder, with Pillar 1 component, the objective is to expand high-quality, publicly funded full-day pre-K. So here's two ways we're achieving this component, through adhering to rigorous quality standards and by partnering with private partners to expand 3- and 4-year-old pre-K. Most recently, Chapel District earned their 5 quality rating with Excels, and I did get a little ahead of myself here. We are currently in the process. All 5 TCPS pre-K programs will be level 5 by the end of 2026. This process, it's a lot of technicality. Ms. Wallstrom facilitates that with each of our programs. So, and aligned with us earning the quality 5, we are also in our second year of, this will actually be like the annual reevaluation of the accreditation. So a reminder that all of our pre-Ks are also accredited. So that is tremendous. And along with that, our pre-K partner, Critchlow, all 5 sites are also Excel level 5. And the pre-K site here for Critchlow will also be continuing their second year of mixed delivery as our mixed delivery partner. So remember, that is one way that we can expand our services for 3- and 4-year-olds is to partner with private providers. And Critchlow was able and is able to go through the process of obtaining the grant and working with Ms. Wallstrom and her team to provide 3- and 4-year-old pre-K slots for this upcoming school year as well.
So how does that work? So Critchlow, they have to, I know it's paid, right? People have to pay to go there.
They have a sliding scale.
So how does that work with the Blueprint and Universal Pre-K?
So the pre-K partner is, Critchlow obtained their own, that's part of the, I don't want to say complication, but it's pretty extensive for a private provider. They have to do all of the paperwork and the grant work to obtain the expansion grant. So that's their responsibility for submitting and earning that grant money to do that. And they earn a certain amount of slots based on how they qualify to meet the grant expectations. Yep. All right. So Pillar 2 requires that all Maryland school districts implement a career ladder to elevate the teaching profession and create opportunities for teachers to advance professionally, deepen their expertise, while also remaining closely connected to teaching students. So the TCPS Career Ladder was implemented on July 1 of last year, and currently we have 26 MBC teachers, and we will have some newly attained certification this December when the scores are released, and also a new cohort beginning in the fall. So our MBC teachers, the 26, they have obtained level 3 of our career ladder. And some of those teachers have, they have gone on their own, and they have done some MBC training to be mentors of our current teachers who are pursuing that certification. So we will know more about our additional teachers in December. The continued rollout of the career ladder includes implementation of the level 4 lead teacher, and Talbot will be engaging in the year 1 pilot for this coming school year. So that is a required next step to implement the career ladder level 4. The nice thing, Maryland has implemented this pilot prior to full implementation, which has to take place starting with the school year 28-29. So the pilot years give us some opportunity to figure out what is best for our school district, the school with the highest needs, and to meet the parameters that are very specific for what a level 4 lead teacher requires.
Could you please remind the board exactly what a level 4 lead teacher is?
Sure. So on our career ladder, and I linked it there for just some later referral. So that is an opportunity for our level 3 teachers to continue to deepen their expertise in leadership, to further their profession. Remember, if we go back to like the purpose of the Pillar 2 is to elevate the professional level of teachers in general, right? So this provides a very, like a next possible step. It is not, like level 3, you can obtain your NBC, and that is, you can move on to level 3. Level 4 is a more specific level, next level of the career ladder, so that any district in Maryland, you have to meet, like you have to have schools that meet the guidelines for implementing level 4. So it's a very specific opportunity for level 3 to continue to grow.
Okay, but what would a level 4 teacher be doing? What would their day look like that would be different from a level 3 teacher?
So it's an extension, or it's past a level 3, what the level 3 expectation is at this time. In the original blueprint, which may be what we think about in the original 2022, the career ladder also included some collaboration time. Remember when we talked about the time outside of the classroom and in the classroom? So this implementation is specific to not having those requirements in place right now Do you want to speak on that too?
Yeah,
Dr.
so
Marcy?
Dr. Davis is absolutely correct. So one of the things that we are taking advantage of, along with other LEAs, is creating this opportunity for teachers to advance up that ladder. When you climb the ladder, this is the next step in those opportunities. So we have gone through a rigorous interview process to be able to kind of vet who's going to take that next step. There are two opportunities. We're starting on level 4A, which is the lead, and then there's a distinguished opportunity. So this teacher would be heavily involved in instructional opportunities, also measuring data, because again, we're looking at a school that has high needs, and so we're looking at a teacher that can help make great impact, supporting the principal as well, so helping teachers as well as helping students. This pilot year gives them an opportunity to also support students as well. So for example, there's an opportunity for them to have a kind of a caseload working with students to provide instruction. And so we're looking at this person that has climbed the ladder, that has made already great impact in the work that they're doing, but also someone that's able to help the school leaders to move the school forward even more. In our district, we don't have any low-performing schools, but based on our data, we know that there are some areas that we can make great impact in. And so this level 4 teacher, again, and they've asked for it when we submitted our paperwork, what is the interview process going to look like? And they have to present data, they have to present a portfolio, they really have to do kind of a really deep dive, and there's an opportunity for people to do that, but it's just really extensive. And so we're excited about the opportunity to have it, but again, there's only small numbers at this particular time. And so we're starting slow, one possible two.
I'm not sure my exact question is being answered, and that's okay. I think maybe you can come back with some more information. It would make sense that a level 4 would be higher than a level 3. That seems like the obvious next step. What I'm looking for is more specifically, what is that person doing in their day-to-day? So let's say you're a second grade teacher and you were a level 3 and now you're a level 4. What does your day look like for your second graders in their classroom? Do they have less access to you? I know there was consideration when Blueprint first came out to pull teachers out and make sure that they had more planning time. Teachers were to be spending less time in the classroom necessarily to divide more of their time with their peers and more collaboration time. There was also talk about moving teachers from their home school, highest performing teachers, to a lower performing school. And I know, because I follow this really closely, that a lot of those things have changed since then, but I worry that this might set off alarm bells in the community to say, oh, we're implementing this new level 4. So for transparency for our community, what exactly does that mean? Are we calling this person, sorry, lots of words, or is this like akin to a grade dean level? Is this like a junior assistant principal? Is this somebody who does the job of a reading or a math coach? It sounds like, yes, a little bit of all of that, but it might be helpful for the board to see a specific job description of a classroom teacher who is not on the career ladder, a level 3 career ladder, that's a mouthful, teacher, a level 4, a level 4A versus the second level 4, something like that. This is all new Blueprint updates, and it changes along the way. So I think it would be helpful to understand for us what this means, and also what this means for us from a salary perspective. As we bring in more of these after this pilot year, how much more is this going to cost the district? How much of this are we required to have as far as the career ladder goes? Lots of questions that I don't think you have to answer on the spot right now, but it might be helpful just for the board to have more of this background.
I think those are all great questions, and we do have, one of the things that we did last year was create a job description for the teacher. It kind of lays out what you said, talking about the entry level, when you enter the career ladder, and then a 2A, 3A, which are having the NBC, and this is the last step on that ladder. And so to your point, like you said, I will be able to give you those job descriptions as well as the documents that Dr. Davis created that really outlines it. Just a small bit of that. So this wouldn't be a second grade teacher who has on top of them a level 4. This would be a person that's outside of the classroom, but also providing some instruction. So we'll be able to give you those job descriptions as well as the outline of the FAQ document that we created, that we shared. So I think that'll probably help to answer some of the questions for the board.
What's the job title for this person? Is it a career ladder teacher? Is it a level 4A?
It's a level 4 teacher.
Thank you. I had those same questions. So I was going to say, oh, is this an admin position?
No,
Not
it's a teacher.
necessarily,
No, it's a teacher position.
but not necessarily like a second grade teacher. It would be,
So a second grade teacher
Or
would have a
third grader.
class assigned to them, and they would be the teacher of record, and they would follow that student from August till June. A level 4 teacher would provide some supports to students based upon data needs, as well as supporting the students, as well as looking at data and areas that need some focus. And so if the need was math, how would they look at the data to help other teachers improve math scores and support the leadership in the building?
so is it like math coaches slash tutors? I know at St. Michael's, they have math, they do the math coaches, but they also use them in the class when they needed more help, and they also helped with the students as well.
I wouldn't call them a math coach, because we have math coaches or mentors. We have mentors. And so what I think will probably be helpful is I get you the job descriptions of a mentor, a coach, as well as the level 4, so that you can see the differences, and maybe that will clarify some things in that way, and then I can answer some questions around that.
I think it would be helpful, and I don't want to speak for the whole board, but I'm kind of wondering, I think the board's number one concern is making sure that there is a highly qualified teacher in every classroom, teacher of record, and while it is important and the state is requiring, that we do expand our job offerings for people in this career field. We want to make sure we're not sacrificing the one for the other. While at the same time we have understood, I think it's been presented very clearly, high-quality tutoring makes a difference. A math or reading coach / interventionist makes a huge difference. More admin in the building, more people who can follow through on discipline, who can sit in IEP meetings, that makes a difference. So the two have to go hand in hand, and I want to make sure, and again, not speaking for the board, but I think that we share the common goal that we're not sacrificing one for the other.
There's a concern in the community that we're too top-heavy, so we just want to clarify and reassure the community that we're not.
And this position is school-based, so it's not working out of the district office. This person is actually boots on the ground in the school building, working in partnership with school leadership to move students forward.
Okay. Pillar 3, we have, the state late winter rolled out this, our new framework for career-connected learning system. So this is to expand access to relevant career-connected learning opportunities for our students. Just looking across the state and figuring out all of the different ways that we are already providing, starting to provide career-connected learning experiences. This is a structure that will provide more consistent experiences and a framework for students across the state. And it is so that it's not just happening specific for CTE pathways, but we also have an opportunity to expand across other academic areas to really ensure that all of our students can get some of these industry experiences, internships, apprenticeships, school-based enterprises and such. And just taking a look as well at those students who may not have found their specific pathway yet, and just finding new and creative ways to provide those experiences. So this, if you take a look, we have the CCL activities. This is a lot of the work that our career counselors have been doing already. The CCL experiences, we have some amazing apprenticeships, internships. We have the capstone and the school-based experiences already. So what this means for us is that, another pilot, but what this is Talbot and 5 other districts have been able to start the process of really looking at what is in place already in our district and how can we improve upon what we are already doing. How can we expand experiences for students with a range of interests or who are still discovering what they want to do next beyond high school or what they're interested in the moment. So We'll continue to work with this framework as it rolls out. Talbot does get the unique experience to work a little more closely, 5 other districts and with MSDE, to just see what this new framework can be to just improve the access for our students for programming.
I appreciate that. That was one of my, my babies. And Dr. Burkhart's done a great job. I know she was able to fix the MIFRE program, which I was so elated for. I've challenged her this year to try to add a vet. So, thank you for that.
Yeah, and I believe.
Vet tech, I should clarify.
Yeah, Mr. Lockman has worked with a lot of new businesses to have some expansive, and he's listening to the students that come across, and they just have these inkling of, this is what I might want to do, and he's out there and making the connections. Great.
I also ran across a homeschooled student this weekend at the 4-H fair. And is there any way we can outreach maybe to these 4-H homeschool programs to encourage them to explore that as an option? I know homeschooling is great, but encouraging them to, when they get into 9th grade, to, the one gal I was talking to had no idea that this was available. So maybe outreaching to these consortiums or whatever they are that says, hey, you know, consider bringing your kid back into public school. Here are some opportunities
see.
that they wouldn't have being homeschooled.
I see what you mean. That's certainly something I could talk to Dr. Burkhart about, your, like, just the awareness of what we are offering as public schools for those pathways, right? Right.
Are homeschooled children allowed to do these pathways? Is that what you were saying?
No,
Bringing them into public school.
she's
Bringing them
Bringing
back?
them back.
Oh.
the
So-
awareness of like what we are providing, of
Okay.
opportunities that way.
So I know we have a lot of internships already. Is this looking at expanding field trips, expanding guest speakers, expanding
No, it's-
job shadows, or?
It's just, sorry if I interrupted. It's just showing that that is one element, one piece of this whole system. Those CCL activities, those are short-term career exposure. Like, these are some ways that we are getting students exposed to opportunities, possibilities of what they could be interested in or what they might have an opportunity to do. So those are things that are already happening and already just available to students. One of the components for Pillar 4 is the community schools, and we know the community school model affords us the opportunity to embed community supports directly in our schools. As you know, last year, we grew to 5 schools, and this year, we're very fortunate that we have Katie Fox as our community school supervisor, coming in as we continue to implement community school model in various phases. We have year 5, 3, and 2 for our 5 schools. So we know this important work is fostering that stronger school, community, family partnerships that creates this environment for our students to flourish and grow. And that's, directly from our AIB comprehensive plan. So Ms. Fox will be joining us and continuing this work this year. All right. And we know Pillar 5 is all where it all comes together, kind of like that backbone of everything, where we're going, and the governance and accountability. So what I did here is I pulled together the first section, or some of the links I shared with you previously, but just a reminder that, and you have the PDF if that second link doesn't work. The information that the AIB published towards the beginning of the year with our progress monitoring. The data dashboards are there as well, and they should be updated as the relevant new data comes, so you can have those to refer back to. The legislative session updates that wrap up, I've included that there for you, and of course the blueprint buzz. Put the spring edition here. I'm holding off the summer edition will come out in August when we get our new teachers back in and Ms. Beatty's doing some work I'm going to focus on there. So this is kind of just a reminder where you can get the communication for all the things that are happening to continue to implement the blueprint along the way. Those are all linked in our blueprint site, on our Talbot County Blueprint site for your reference.
Can you get that on Facebook? I haven't seen it. I don't know if it is. Maybe I
So,
missed it.
I think when I publish it, you can push it out on Facebook, on social media, so it's there.
And it's been in the weekly update, and I think
Yeah,
it should be posted on the website, that I did not follow.
it can,
It has been, but it's when, when she completes an edition, you post it, and then like reshare, so.
and it's usually the cover is like it'll have like art, so it's usually it'll stand out wherever it's posted, how you guys have been posting it. So, all right, and that is it for me.
Any more questions for Dr. Davis? Sorry, we interrupted you along the way.
That's all right.
No?
All
Thank
right,
you so
thank
much.
you.
Okay, next on our agenda, computer closed, we have our special education report with MCIE and our special ed committee updates led by Mrs. Menches.
So good evening, President Jackson, members of the board. For those of you who may not know me, my name is Kristen Menches, and I'm the Director of Special Education. I am here with several other members that will be coming up and sharing some information as well tonight. I'm here to share some updates from this past school year, as well as our priorities for this coming year, and share the staffing plan recommendations for this coming school year. The purpose of special education is to carry out the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, which stipulates that schools must provide a free appropriate public education, also known as FAPE. These services must also be provided in the least restrictive environment. In Talbot County, while we need to follow these federal regulations, we have also outlined a few areas of focus based on our data.
Ms. Menches, would you mind just stepping a little closer to the microphone? I just want to make sure it's picking you up.
I'll
Thank
just
you.
move it. So our first area of focus is to increase student achievement for students with disabilities, which will also help narrow the gap of achievement between students with disabilities and their non-disabled peers. And if you can remember back, for those of you who came last year, we talked about this, these first three areas of focus last year when I presented as well. So for the overall data shows that the gap is getting smaller in the younger grade levels, particularly in third grade, but it's still quite large in the upper grades. And I know that there's a lot of numbers on this screen. This might make it a little bit easier for you to see visually. So this represents the same data as was on the last slide in graph form for students in the elementary grades. It also more clearly shows how students in third grade who are receiving special education services, as shown by the second group of bars, have steadily gone up over the last 4 years. Overall, fourth grade has also shown the same upward trend.
Can you state
Let me go back.
what percentage of special education students are intellectually disabled?
Off the top of my head, no, I cannot.
I know, can you, you're going to have to go slow on this for me. So the blue is, 2022, okay.
2022.
Okay.
So the.
Yeah, what do you mean by
So the-
disabled and special ed?
So the first set of bars shows students that do not receive special education services and are in third grade by year. Then the second set of bars are students in third grade that receive special education services by year. And it goes for every single grade level.
So you broke it out between Gen Ed and students with disabilities, SWD.
Correct.
Thank you.
Is everybody good here? The next set is going to show secondary students for English language arts. So this bar graph shows the ELA proficiency rates for students in the secondary grade levels for those who do not receive special education services as compared to those who do receive special education services. And as you can see, there's not been as much narrowing in the gap as we would like to see in these upper grades.
Okay, I just want to make sure I'm reading this correctly. If I am looking at students with disabilities, starting in sixth grade, the blue bar in sixth grade was in 22. So in 23, those same kids would have gone from the blue bar in sixth grade to the orange bar in 23 in seventh grade, correct? Okay, and then in 24, they're the gray bar in eighth grade. So they went just below 10, like 17, down to 9% proficiency. Am I?
So
No, I'm
the-
talking about students, they started in sixth in 2022. In 2023, they were in seventh. In 2024, they were in eighth in gray. And in 2025, they were in yellow.
So these are just sixth grade students. It's a different group of students each year.
I think that's why she's acknowledging that it's seventh grade the following year, because then it's the
Correct.
same cohort.
We spend a lot of
Correct.
time comparing sixth grade to sixth grade, and it's different kids. You're comparing different kids to different kids. And I find that really challenging for myself to understand and also to explain in the community. Like, this year's sixth grade was awesome. This year's sixth grade struggled. There are different kids. I don't think you can compare them. But what I'm trying to do for my own self is look at the same cohort of kids and how
Well-
they are doing.
Yes and no, because when you're talking about students with disabilities, it could also be a different group of, some of them are going to be the same, but some of them are going to be different because students are coming in, becoming eligible for special education, and students are becoming not eligible for special education. So you're going to have a little bit of a different group of students.
That makes sense. Is eighth grade a big time that kids would be exiting or entering? I'm looking at sixth grade and they go up in seventh, big drop in eighth, and then back way up in 10th. So I'm kind of wondering, hey, what happened in eighth grade? Are we talking about different kids? Is there a major shift? Should we be looking at the services that we're providing or the way that we're assisting in eighth grade? Are those questions that you all are asking as well?
Yes, we are going to be looking at all of that in terms of analyzing this data and figuring out what are there commonalities in the data? Are there, is it the way interventions are being provided? Were there changes in any interventions over this period of time? So yes, to your point, I think all of those questions are on the table to see if, especially back in the younger grades, where we were seeing changes in some of that. I think some of it had to do with some of the professional development that we were implementing over those years, where we were seeing some pretty good progress with some of those students. But for some of these more stagnant years, why is that where we're seeing not as many changes as we would like to see? So yes,
Is student with disabilities the same as special ed?
yes,
Okay, and so this regular sixth grade, that's general ed?
correct. So any student who is not receiving special education services,
Okay,
who tested that year.
And all these students have IEPs or 504s, correct?
So these students, where we say students with disabilities, are only students who received special education services. A 504 student wouldn't be included in this.
You could do a presentation on that, like why, I mean, I would like a presentation on that, of why a 504 isn't special education or an IEP, or is an IEP under students with disabilities?
An IEP is under students with
Okay.
disabilities. A
Because wouldn't a
504
504, would that be like, that's not dyslexia or?
Well, they could be, but
Well,
they're not
yeah.
receiving special education services. They would only be receiving accommodations if they have a 504. They're not actually receiving specialized instruction.
Before an IEP are totally different. They're not necessarily related at all.
Can I move forward? Can we advance?
Yes, however, I think that that might be helpful for a future meeting, is to have a full explanation as to what the difference is between a 504 and an IEP and how a student would move through the process of getting qualified for each. Would that be helpful for some background information? Okay.
So the same trend as was seen on the ELA proficiency rates is evident with the math proficiency rates. However, the only difference is that we need to improve proficiency rates in the area of math with both students who have disabilities and students who don't have disabilities, particularly in the secondary grade levels. Therefore, focusing on general education Tier 1 math instruction will help both students with and without disabilities.
I also want to add
go-
too, and I know Dr. Davis was just up there sharing the blueprint. Per the blueprint, one of their pillars under accountability and governance is looking at these very data sets for grades 3, ELA, grade 3 through 8, ELA, grade 3 math, and grade 3 through 8 math in all of these, and this is one of the subgroups that they look at. So when you go on their dashboard, they have every LEA, they have all this data that you're looking at as well. And that's one of the criteria that they look at when we talk about what we're doing under Pillar 5 in the blueprint.
Much like the ELA graphs that you saw, the same trend for third and fourth grade math proficiency rates is evident here. So you can see third and fourth, and grades were showing that upward trend. Whereas secondary, we still need to work on this a bit.
I mean,
But-
I'm concerned about the rates. 10th, 8th, like 5%? 6%, what is that? 5% eighth graders proficient? Is that right?
Yes, that is correct.
10th grade, I mean, you're going up, like 20 is the highest there, not 100. It's scary.
Yeah, so we are looking at how to move the needle at the upper grades.
I'm seeing the same trend here. The students who were in sixth grade in 2022 accomplished about the same in 2023 and then tanked. Well, I mean, tanked through 2%, but they went down in eighth grade. So kind of wondering what's happening in eighth grade with special education. This is not related to special education. I'm sorry, I ask this every time we talk about math data. When we are talking about eighth graders testing in math, that is students who are in eighth grade math, not students who are in algebra. So students who took advanced math, which is essentially eighth grade math, in seventh grade aren't tested for that in eighth grade. Okay. They take Algebra 1. So somebody pointed out to me that those are our highest achieving students who are automatically being removed from our data in this eighth grade. And so it may be skewing our data a little bit disproportionately because they all took eighth grade math in seventh grade, so they're never their data, their information is never showing up in our scores.
So when does their data show up? In seventh grade? When do their results come out?
So our students who are accelerated in mathematics take the seventh grade MCAP because they take advanced math in seventh grade. When they're in eighth grade, they do not sit for the eighth grade MCAP because
Okay,
they
so
are
that
tak-
explains the drop then.
they're taking
right?
Algebra 1 in eighth grade, and we do not want to double test students. So we do have, our eighth grade is a smaller subset than the number of students you would see in seventh grade.
And what is the
That makes sense.
percentage of eighth graders who are taking the advanced math?
I'll need to get that number for you. I don't have it off the top of my head.
Okay, I'd heard it was about a third of the class, thereabouts. Does that sound about right?
That would not surprise me.
Yeah, so that is a very significant number in our statistics to keep in mind, I think.
And if that was for seventh grade, then it showed proficiency, or that wouldn't have been the case on that bar graph. See what I'm saying, where it's elevated there almost to 20%, so would that be, so that's not really a bad thing necessarily, is it?
Can you say that again?
So if they're in seventh grade, that, the yellow, and there, does that test the algebra students too? The advanced students?
Still super
that's
low. It's
not
not
a
even
bad
20%.
That's not a bad thing. Okay.
I think we
Carla,
need to
it
go
is.
back
It's
to
not even
basics,
20%.
Back the way we used to teach
Proficient.
math, because it's evident this is not working.
I mean, that's the scary part. We're looking at the graph, but it's going to 20. So not even 20% of the seventh graders were proficient.
I don't want to cut anybody off, but this is a completely different subject, not unworthy of discussion for sure, but just we could go sideways and talk about this, which is not at all related to Ms. Mencha's presentation and the rest of the evening. So if we want to have a conversation about math proficiency, I think we should, but maybe that should be a separate agenda item.
On this topic, though, and somewhat related, what percentage, and you may have said this earlier on, and I didn't grasp it, but what percentage of the students are the special education students represented here?
So as a total cohort each year, we've had anywhere from about 520 students to about 550 students each year. So represented in these numbers,
So is that, do you mean in each grade or total?
total. So grades are going to be different.
So K through 10 or K through 12?
No, age 3 to 21. So that's the whole expanse. I'd have to get the individual grades numbers for you.
I think in the past, our special education population has been about 10% of our population. Yeah.
Now, obviously, I understand that students under grade 3 don't take MCAP, but they do take DIBELS. And so I'm curious if there's a way to reflect the learning of kids who are younger than grade 3 and how they are achieving in special ed compared to the gen ed population.
Yeah, so students younger than third grade take a variety of assessments that equate to whatever either general ed or their IEPs are looking at. So we could certainly, and we actually talked about that, it's kind of, we're going to probably talk about that a little bit later, but we've talked about looking at that as a different way to track progress for these students in terms of IEP goals. Like, do we look at progress for students with disabilities a little bit differently to see how many are actually progressing in terms of their IEP goals and not just achievement on MCAP? So we could certainly look at that too.
Yeah, and I get that point completely, but I'm more specifically talking about those K through 2 that do take DIBELS, how they measure up to their not students with disabilities category.
Yeah, we could certainly look at that.
I know we presented that when we presented the Dibbles data, but we could reshare it.
So in terms of how we've been addressing this focus area over the course of this school year, has been through ongoing professional development to support special education teachers' development of narrowing the gap goals. In addition, new teachers were provided with professional development on the key elements of the ELA and math curriculums, and as well as a focus over the last few years has been on professional development on the provision of specially designed instruction. For next school year, we plan to continue providing professional development on how Goalbook Toolkit, which is a resource that we provide our special education staff, how that can be used to develop narrowing the gap goals, supporting teachers, new teachers specifically, with ELA and math curriculum, and providing ongoing coaching and support on the provision of specially designed instruction and instructional strategies. And ELA and math data will also be analyzed, as I said, to determine any instructional implications for students moving forward. So our focus area 2 is to provide special education instruction and services inside the general education setting to most students, especially for students in the elementary grades. And I do think that this is having an impact at those younger grades where we see the shift of students starting to increase their trajectory in terms of how well they're doing on MCAP. That's anecdotal, but I do think that them being in gen ed and being exposed to the curriculum is starting to have an impact. So for focus area 2, as I said, our focus has been elementary, as we wanted to be intentional in terms of the inclusive practices with our implementation of that and start with our youngest learners first. We also wanted a slow and intentional rollout to ensure each school and staff receive the professional development, support, and services they need to serve students with more needs in the general education setting, which includes staffing. We also wanted to ensure students who receive special education services receive instruction on skill deficits, but also receive instruction on the core content curriculum. So this shows over the course of the last, I guess, 6 years, 5 years, where students have been placed. So the most left side of the chart is students who are inside the general education setting the majority of their day. The middle column is students that are kind of a mix of general education and special education. And then the far right is students that are pretty much all out or in separate schools or residential facilities. So our goal is to get this number high as we can, because we want students to be in general ed as much as they can. We're never going to get to 100 because there's never going to be all students who can be in general education all day. But as I said, the goal is to expose the majority of students to general education so they can receive general education curriculum and instruction. And slowly, we have seen more students, especially at the younger grades, being able to be in general education more. Make sure I didn't forget anything. And this has been through our partnership with MCIE. And just to be clear, That has been a collaboration and partnership. They have come in and partnered with us to provide professional development, support, and support our staff with how this could be done in a very intentional way. And the next slide talks a little bit more about that. So we developed a 5-year inclusive practices district-wide plan, which you should have all received. And that plan talks about how over the next, I think it started 2 years ago, so we're kind of in the middle of that plan, how that plan would roll out to all of our schools, the professional development that would be provided, and the support that would be provided to our schools in order to provide inclusive practices across our district in an intentional way. However, we know that this is constantly evolving as we've been rolling it out, a constantly evolving work as we've been implementing it in our schools. So we realize that sometimes we need to pull back a little bit so that we can implement it in the best way possible, knowing that we really need to provide adequate time and professional development to support our staff and our teachers. So at times we have pulled back a little bit so that we can do it in the correct way possible.
And I want to jump into, because I think the important thing is that we are listening to the staff that are working with students. And so what we've heard is that when are we getting MCIE? Or when is this being done to us? And it's not that. MCIE is just the consultants that we're using to do inclusive practices better and to learn what inclusive practices are, the best research. And I think that's what's been floating out there are staff members that are thinking something's being done to them versus professional development and learning the best practices for inclusive education. And so we'll continue to do a better job listening, making sure we're using the correct terminology when we are talking about inclusive practices so that if we need to turn, pivot, we're doing that and we're responding to what we're seeing, what we're hearing out in the schools.
And really, the work is not different. So we in Talbot County have been, as you can see, our LRE, so where students have been placed, has really been in general education all along. Where we really wanted to focus was, one, making sure that we were doing the best job possible for those students that were in general education. But also for those students that had more significant needs, that we were really mindful that they were being intentionally included and were meaningfully engaged when they were in the general education setting. So that's really been our focus, is really IEP teams are still functioning like IEP teams function, which is looking at that specific student's needs with the parent and determining what the best placement is for that student. So that hasn't changed throughout this process. It really is now, how are we intentionally including the student in the best way possible when they are in the general education setting? And so that's really been the shift and the difference with this work.
I think that's nice because kids seem to be more forgiving than us as we grow older. So, starting that practice of acceptance with their differences is a great priority, so that's great.
I will talk until I'm blue in the face about growing up in an inclusive district and about having students with disabilities in my classroom starting as early as kindergarten and what an immense impact that had on me as a person. I've shared the story before. I named one of my children after one of my classmates because he had such a profound impact on me growing up. I think that all kids should grow up this way. So the fact that we are and I say finally, but like really shining a light on this and moving intentionally in this direction is where we should have been. I think it's where we should have been 30 years ago. So I'm beyond thrilled to see that we are really putting a focus in this area. What I do want to know is why we don't really engage with a one-to-one model with an adult support for a student who needs more support in their classroom than their classroom teacher. And I kind of hear this from the teachers in the space saying, hey, we are really engaged in this. We really want to do this too, but we don't have enough adult support in doing this. And is this a budget? Did this come about because of budget priorities? And has there been any discussion about moving more towards bringing in more IAs to provide more support, which just helps every single person in the classroom?
So we do have adult support. What we don't have is we don't call them one-on-ones. And that's very intentional. We don't want an adult ever to be Velcroed to a kid. We actually developed a whole adult support guidance document this year that we've been using all year that really takes into account looking at data and making sure that we have the data to support that the student needs additional adult support. And then if they do need additional adult support, because there are some students that do really need additional adult support due to behavior or due to the level of their need, that we also develop a FADE plan so that we're teaching them the skills that they need to become more independent so that they don't need that adult forever.
Which is fair and important, but I also am concerned about the lead classroom teacher too, because maybe the classroom teacher needs more adult support and the student is okay, but they need more support. There are two important players, here, and we want to make sure that we are giving our teachers every resource they possibly can have to be successful in this, because the last thing we want is to push forward a really good plan that is really important and have our teachers say, whoa, you're putting too much on me. You're not giving me what I need to be successful in this space.
I think in the last, I'd have to go back and look at the specific numbers, but I think in the last 5 years, I think we've added about 20 more instructional assistants in special education. So I don't think it's that we haven't added more adults as we've looked at more inclusive practices and all of that, because we definitely have. And it's certainly not that we don't want to give students or staff the adult support if they need it. We just want to be mindful that when you give a student an adult support, that you are taking away some of that independence, and we don't want to over-prompt and over-support kids. So it's a balancing act of making sure that, one, they need it, and that they don't become over-reliant on an adult prompting them. So the guidelines, and I can show you the guidance document if you want to see what it says, is pretty specific, and I think it has started to help teams guide them through the process of determining whether adult support's needed, when it's needed, because sometimes it may only be needed for parts of the day, like during transitions, or during certain academic portions of the day. So I think that guidance document's been helpful.
I think it would be helpful to see, I think it would be helpful to see. But I also, and again, we are here to do what's right for kids. We are here to do what's best for kids. But I know that what's best for kids is having a teacher who feels like they can handle their classroom, who feels like they have enough support to manage their classroom. And so I just want to make sure that is at the forefront of our discussion at all times too, that we are supporting our teachers in as much as we are supporting our students, because it is a very 50% relationship. You both have to show up and do your job.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Coming off of that, can you speak to specifically some of the kindergarten classes? Because I know in pre-K, we have kids in special ed in the self-contained classroom, and then they go into kindergarten, and they are not in their self-contained class. And then there are more special needs some teachers have more, now, I don't know if it's special needs, it could be behavior, it could be, behavior problems
Are you,
also.
are you speaking about the shift from P3
Maybe it is P3.
to pre-K?
I thought it was I thought the shift was specifically like they come into kindergarten where they were in a self-contained, I mean, maybe they aren't. They were kind of let loose in the kindergarten and with no supports. Is that not true?
That's not accurate.
Okay. Can you speak to maybe the number of kids in one classroom? I know some teachers had more numbers of students that were difficult.
So I know this past year, and Ms. Kane might be able to speak to it a little bit more, about natural proportion scheduling, which was done last year and was done this year, for this coming school year, which is done to mitigate what you're talking about. And so I think that last year was a learning year, and this coming year, a lot more of the staff were involved, pretty much all the staff were involved. And I think that some of those subtle nuances in some of the classes, we're not going to see that, I think, because there were a couple of classes where there may have been some higher numbers of needs in certain classrooms where that was leveled out, which is what natural proportion scheduling is, making sure there's not too many
And
high
that's
needs in one
right.
class.
That's where we need to really support our teachers. I'm very concerned about that part. And the other piece I would like to say, and you can take this or leave this, but I really hope we're soliciting our teachers in the classroom, our special ed teachers, and asking their advice and, what they think, where students should go. Should they be in the least restrictive? Because sometimes the least restrictive environment is the restrictive environment because they can't.
So so in terms of an IEP team, the IEP team is made up of a special education teacher, a general education teacher, an administrator, and then the parent, and any other member of the IEP team, like a speech therapist or whoever else serves the student. So that group of people are the ones that develop that IEP. So absolutely, the general ed teacher and the special ed teacher are an integral part of the people that develop that plan for that student.
But again, the kids that are just behavior issues and aren't special education, they don't have an IEP.
That's another story. That's another meeting.
Do we work with Talbot Mentors at all as a support system?
I think so, yeah. That's not my area of expertise, but yes, I think so.
Maybe it might be something we might need to explore. Again, going back to teacher support, budgeting issues, it is a service that we have in the community that maybe we need to try to make a connection with when it comes to this, if able.
So I think we did this slide. So in terms of how this has been addressed this school year and will be addressed into next school year, as I said, MCIE has been our partner and been collaborating with both Easton Elementary and St. Michael's Elementary School this past school year, which will continue into next school year. There has also been opportunities provided to our staff in all these areas bulleted here for professional development. And I am now going to introduce Ms. Julia Smith to outline a little bit more about our Inclusive Practices District team.
Good evening. My name is Julia Smith. I'm supervisor of special education, so I work closely with Ms. Menchez and most everyone else here. I'm going to just put a little more historical context into our partnership with MCIE, and just start with a foundation that oftentimes we are really speaking to our teachers and our staff and our school leaderships and you, saying that all students start in general education. Special education services is an additional layer of instruction and supports that some students require to access general education, right? So it's not a replacement for general education ever, but those supports and services are varying degrees. Some might need a little, some might need a lot. Okay, so I'm just going to kind of set that as kind of a shared understanding. How the partnership with MCIE came about was actually under our Access, Equity, and Progress grant that was through MSDE. And I wanted to preface by saying that because it says that everything we're doing with it speaks to access to educational opportunities and experiences for all kids, as well as making meaningful progress in their own learning, and it's an equity issue, right? And that goes back to everything that has already been said tonight, so I don't want to be redundant, but it's directly tied to not only the state strategic plan, but the district strategic plan. So the structure, because again, this is a Talbot County initiative. Thank you, Dr. P, for making that clear, because even within our buildings, within our own teachers, they'll refer to it as MCIE. And that is a misnomer, I think. This is a Talbot County initiative. We have partnered with MCIE because they focus on this. So they bring a lot of technical assistance as well as professional learning, and it's very focused. So they've brought the structure, and part of this structure is that we have a district implementation team or a district leadership team, and then we have a school-based leadership team. So I'm going to talk to you about the district team, and then our school leaders will talk about what's happening in the building level. So the district leadership team meets monthly, and Dr. Pepakai, Dr. Einhorn, it's cross-departmental. We have curriculum supervisors that sit on the team, we have student services, we have our behavior interventionist, and our purpose is really to talk through policy, procedure, and everything that you have identified as a concern, we're talking about. You know, how do we make sure that the classrooms are ready to receive some of our students with the most significant needs? How do we make sure that the teachers are ready? And so there's a lot of discussion at the district level around professional learning, but also around staffing and allocating resources. And so as part of that work, as Ms. Menchez mentioned, the 5-year inclusive practices plan was developed because we eventually want, so MCIE again, they focus on students with significant cognitive disabilities, but what we know in our inclusive practice is we expand it for any student with a disability needs to have equal access to general education and high quality instruction and opportunity. So, but we are really focused on some of our students who historically have not been accessing that. Okay, so the 5-year plan that you have access to talks about what schools we've identified in the process. The inclusive practices framework is also something that the district team developed, and then also in close collaboration with our schools that are doing the work and our special education teachers, because what we found happening is that there was not a cohesive, shared understanding of district expectations. So it was becoming this, oh, well, when MCIE is here, this is happening. And we're kind of saying, you know, no, they're really supporting the work that the department and the district and every school is doing. And they're just helping us deepen it because it is their sole focus. So they are expert in these things. So we started in school year 24-25 with Easton Elementary School, and then this school year brought in St. Michael's Elementary School, and that is part of the district-wide plan. The only other thing I wanted to tell you about the Inclusive Practices Framework. So there were a lot of questions from our teachers. What are the expectations? How am I supposed to do this? What is professional learning? What are the resources? What's a learner plan? So I believe that many of you are familiar with some of the work that's being done. What this guidance document clarifies is there's 3 sections. So the first section is student-centered planning and specially designed instruction. And that's where, if you've heard the term learner planning, some of that comes into play under, we're really looking at not just the IEP, because the IEP is still the guiding instructional document, but what does that look like in practice in the classroom? What does the implementation really look like? That's what the learner plan addresses, and that's all done at the school level. The second section is school-based professional learning. We're really leaning into our school leaders and those school leadership teams, saying this is what we need, because some of our schools, I mean, they have very different needs in terms of making sure their classrooms are ready to receive all learners. And then the third section speaks to master scheduling and staff assignments. And again, it was mentioned about natural proportion scheduling and some of the shifts in not only thinking, but in practicing and how we're actually developing some of these things. There is going to be a one-pager developed. That's something that came out of the Special Education Committee, is that the actual document is about 10 pages long, and that's really for our staff and our school leaders. But we do want to have like a one-pager that's much more friendly to parents, but also to some of our staff that may not be co-teaching, but the reality is the majority of our staff district-wide at some point will be a teacher of a student with a disability and a significant cognitive disability potentially. And I just want to, I'll close by saying how we're relating this back to our greater, student body of students with disabilities, is that when we plan for the highest support needs first, we can then scale instruction for the variability, of all learners in the classroom. And that's, again, some of the concerns, like we do have some planned professional learning specific to Easton Elementary, specific to St. Michael's. And if our teachers know how to work with our most complex needs, they'll be versed, hopefully, in working with all kids. All right, so I'll turn it over now to our school leaders. All right.
Hey there, how are you tonight? I'm Indra Bullock, the school principal at St. Michael's Elementary School.
Hi, Katessa Kane, Principal, Easton Elementary School. So at Easton Elementary School, we are in year 2 and focusing on increasing our inclusive practices at our school. And as we're stepping into year 2, we are continuing our focus on co-planning and co-teaching with our teachers, but we're also kind of weaving in a little bit more of that, strengthening our Tier 1 instruction while also strengthening that SDI within the classroom.
And it's interesting that you brought up natural proportion
Specially designed
scheduling.
instruction,
Yeah.
SDI.
Sorry.
Especially
So used to those acronyms.
I actually wanted to highlight the natural proportion scheduling that we did at St. Michael's Elementary School, because the staff left after that day feeling really empowered. They appreciated the collaboration and the voices that were at the table. Normally, our gen ed teachers create the class lists the year prior. They know their students best and know what their needs are. This gave us the opportunity to collaborate. I was at the table for all of the development, but the teachers led it alongside of the special ed teachers and the school counselor. So we worked as grade levels. The whole group strategically developed the class list. We looked at individual students based on the level of support needed from the teachers. This is different from the past when we looked at individual students with labels or as maybe a behavior issue, multi-language learner, and in this case, looking at the level of the support needed from the teacher gave us more of an asset-based lens to view students instead of maybe a deficit-based lens. And so teachers really appreciated that. We had more productive conversations about what was actually needed in the classroom. And the natural proportions and you were talking about like too many special ed kids in one classroom. The natural proportions naturally separates kids based on their need of support by the teacher. So no teacher left feeling like, I wouldn't want that class, but I would want that class. You know what I mean? All of the classes were kind of equally dispersed with our beautiful students and their strengths.
Can I ask you a quick question?
Oh.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So are they getting the supports that they
Yes.
need?
So yes, a general ed teacher has a class, and all of the students in that class are her students. But supports are provided throughout the day. We've talked about students who go to intervention and get tutoring, special education, social workers. I mean, we have supports throughout the school, working with our gen ed teachers to provide the supports that are needed. And we look at students individually when we decide what is needed. And the teachers themselves helped us to build those groupings, but they also helped us. I know Kristen was mentioning the school leadership teams. When we're talking about our inclusive practices this year, we have gen ed teachers at the table, special ed, counselor, speech and language, and we all are talking about our school as a whole and what our school needs to move the work forward.
Okay, so this is for this coming school year. The last school year wasn't so much that.
We didn't,
I mean,
we did it at the end of this school year for next year.
Can I?
Yes, I just wanted to say that the teachers left saying that it was going to be more manageable, that they were feeling empowered to meet the needs of all their students.
And I just want to add, with coming into the new school year, that's one of the things that we focused on at Easton Elementary, adding more stakeholders to the table. We also included our specialists into our national proportioning scheduling so that we had additional voices at the table to make sure that we were spreading our students out and making sure we were meeting the needs of not only the students, but also making sure that we're providing the teachers with the supports that they need in those spaces.
And we actually built on what Easton Elementary has learned, and even though our school populations are very different, when we talked with, when I was working with Tessa on what my school needed, we came up with, we have some students who are just in gen ed for specials, and we've never co-planned and co-taught with our specialists before. So our special ed teachers are now co-planning with the specialists to give the students more inclusivity within the classroom when they're in there, so that there's just more opportunities for deep learning for all the kids.
So my question is related to all of this. I know in the past, classes were designed to have cohorts of students. You had the MLL cohort or you had the GT cohort, and that made scheduling for everybody, including the specialists, including the special ed teachers, much easier because we have fewer people, and so they need to be in more places at once. Does this change in scheduling make it much harder on them? Do we have enough people to meet the need now because the students are spread out and not a cohort? They can't all have their needs met at the same time. They have to go to multiple classrooms to do it. Are we creating more problems? Do we need more people because of the way we're doing it?
No, that was definitely taken into consideration, and what we started with was best case scenario, and then we worked toward, okay, these are the resources that we have. What is the best case scenario with the natural proportions? And we did that with the teachers in the space. So in the past, that would have been done in the summer. I would have looked at what the teachers gave me, and I would have done that myself. They'd come back in the next school year and sometimes be like, this isn't the class list I made, you know what I mean? So we were able to do that collaboratively. And then the last bullet is talking about professional development opportunities. Our school leadership inclusive practices team worked with MCIE to develop what was needed, what was the best next step for us as a school in our learning. And so we are focusing on co-planning and co-teaching in the upcoming school year for professional development.
And as I mentioned, we're doing the same thing, but also looking into that specialized design instruction within the classroom.
Did you have any other questions for us?
I have a comment, and I just want to say thank you so much for including us in your meeting with the teachers. It really helped give us an inside look at how you do things. And the feeling of support from you and Susie, you could feel it. And that is so important, Because the biggest complaint that we hear from teachers is how burned out they are, and they don't have support from the administration. And you've got a lot of burned out teachers, and I just want to commend you because you were supporting those teachers, and you could see it and they could feel it. And we really need, that's a big concern of mine, is teacher burnout, because we're putting so much of a load on these teachers, and they're trying their best, but we really need to support them from the administration, from us on down. I mean, we're a team, and we need to pull together for these teachers.
Yep, thank you. It was great to have you. Come again.
Definitely let us know, because I think that we've mentioned we all want to be included in the school improvement plan meetings in the upcoming school year. But my question is, a lot of the feedback I heard was pre-K teachers feeling overwhelmed. And how does that work with the natural proportion planning when you have students that are new to the building? So you have maybe pre-K or K children who you don't have any prior experience with to build that natural proportioning schedule. Do you then adapt and move students around, or do you add extra support to that classroom?
A couple of things that we do at Easton Elementary. So we do some play dates over the summer, so it gets us some ideas to get our eyes on our students and to see what's coming into the next school year. We don't try to do too much moving around of students because that causes an additional layer of trauma to some of our students, but we will do moving staff around if need be, getting additional staff into the classroom, adjusting schedules. So we have absolutely, and we do things like that. Space.
I have a question, and this is coming from some teachers. So I understand Easton Elementary is very large, and they get a lot of the special ed students, even if they're out of area, like at White Marsh, when they should be at they're districted for White Marsh, and they send them to Easton Elementary. Why are we doing that? I know a lot of teachers said if we would just keep our own, it wouldn't be so overwhelming. I don't know if that's a question for you, or I just wanted to put that out there.
I think that's a question for Ms. Mencha.
Oh, okay. I was going to ask you earlier, but.
Thank you.
So I looked at the numbers, and I don't remember the exact number off the top of my head, but it's not as many as it seems. Now, there's two things. One, parents have the right to ask for out of area, and Easton is not a closed school. So some are there because their parent has asked for them to be there out of district or out of area. And it's not an IEP placed student at that building.
Okay, because I was going to say, maybe Easton Elementary is maxed out on that section. They might be an open school for general ed, but for special ed.
That would be wrong for us to do that, for us to say, you can't, only general ed students can go to Easton Elementary and special ed can't go. That would be discriminating. So we can't say that. But for students who have specific needs at the outlying schools, who have more significant needs, we'll just say Chapel, let's say. If they have more significant needs and need a very small classroom setting, like a self-contained classroom, Chapel does not have that many students that have that kind of need. So we would have to create a classroom with a teacher and instructional assistants for maybe 2 students. And so it's really not fiscally sound for us to create that kind of setting at Chapel to serve a couple of students rather than having them go to Easton Elementary where that kind of programming is already available. So that's why we send some kids to Easton Elementary or to St. Michael's Elementary, because St. Michael's Elementary also receives some students from a school like Tillman.
Well, this is probably politically incorrect, what I'm getting ready to say, but the teachers at Easton Elementary School are crying out for help. They need help with their students, with the discipline that they cannot handle. Ann and I, we all saw it firsthand. Teachers getting bitten, peed on, kicked, and when they call administration, deal with it. And we really need to answer these problems. We have a lot of students, and we have some problems that really need to be addressed.
That's why I said if it's overwhelmed with special ed and we can't support, then, maybe the answer has to be no, but
But
they.
not all these kids are special ed, is the thing.
And I think
No, I will agree with Mrs. Bridges there.
But I think we have to understand, and I think Ms. Smith was the one who said it, everybody starts off in general ed, and it's just students need more. And so it's student by student, school by school. We walk in, we may see one thing, we walk in another school, we may see another. And I think the important thing is that we have a plan and a system to address as each student, that teachers have a mechanism to be able to talk about whatever they're dealing with in the classroom, to have the support, and working with consultants to be able to show us research-based practices to be able to address that.
And also, it's important to have admin in there, in these classrooms, the board members. I mean, I've had teachers say, can the board please come sit in my classroom, in the kindergarten classes? It's that bad, that they want the board to come into their classrooms. So that's when you know it's bad. So I definitely think we need to do something about that kind of support for our teachers.
I think to sort of add on your point that we are potentially talking about two very different things. So when you're talking about a student who's receiving special education services, like, for example, this could be a child who is dyslexic in 4th grade, and this is the quietest kid, never got in an argument, never raised their voice, struggles all day long because they can't read, because that's where their disability is. And you would never know. If you walked into their classroom, you're not going to be like, you're the problem, you're the special ed, you're causing your teacher to expend all of their energy because your teacher doesn't know how to teach so that you can learn. Whereas you might have another kid who is not special ed, who has significant trauma and has significant behavior issues, does not have an IEP, is not identified, actually is causing 90% of the problems in the classroom, but is completely separate from this conversation, which doesn't mean that kid doesn't need, we need to fix that problem. We need to fix that problem for our teachers, but that doesn't fall under the umbrella of special education staffing, special education services. That falls under behavioral support, emotional support, who's in the building, it's staffing from a general perspective, and I think that it's so easy to assume special ed, the red lights, like you're the problem, but I don't know that it correlates quite easily like that. Again, does not negate what you're saying, does not negate the problem, and it doesn't make the work for the teacher to actually teach to students who have intellectual disabilities any less for them, but they have to then manage the behavior problems on top of managing special education.
And when it is a student that receives special education services, we have a whole process for that. So we have functional behavior assessments that we can do and behavior intervention plans that can be developed. And then the adult support guidelines that we can put into place to determine whether a student needs additional adult support. So we have a whole lot of processes and procedures that we can go through to determine, does a student need additional supports? And like I said, behavior intervention plans. So there is a lot in special education that can determine what additional things can be put into place through special education. But you're right, Ms. Jackson, there's nothing that special education can do if it's not related to a student who's receiving special education services. That could be compounding some things in classrooms sometimes.
Other than, and I come back to this, and we don't have to call it one-on-one, additional adult support in the classroom is helpful for all of the students in the classroom. And maybe that adult is tagged for that class because of that one student that they're supposed to be providing support for. But an adult in a room is another adult human body who can help with all things. And again, I'm old, so this is old data, but growing up, we had students who had one-on-ones with them, and they assisted with the entire classroom. It's like our kindergarten IAs.
The additional adult support, though, it's very specific and specified, and these ladies can attest to what the IEP looks like in terms of it's specified what the student needs it for, and it's outlined very specifically in the IEP. Why that student's receiving it and what they need support with from that adult.
I will counter that by saying, and this is at secondary, not in elementary, but my students have been in co-taught classrooms with a classroom teacher and a special education teacher, and my student in that classroom is not receiving special education services, but received a lot of help and support and guidance from the special education teacher who co-taught their class. So there is a model for it. We're doing it and doing it well for a special ed teacher to provide services to everybody while still meeting the needs of the student in their class with the IEP.
And that's different because that's a special ed teacher. So the special ed teacher in a general ed classroom, I would hope, supports all the students in the classroom and not just the students who have special ed needs. But when we're talking about an adult support, there are very specific, it outlines in the IEP very specifically why that adult is being put with that student in their IEP.
And throughout the day, what parts of the day?
Correct.
And I think that point is sometimes confusing to staff that may not know that, because they may see a person there and not know that they're specifically there because of the IEP goals, versus a co-taught room where there's someone in there, both special ed and general ed, both servicing the needs.
And a fade plan, as we start to try to fade off the adult, there are times when the adult support may start to fade away. So they may be standing at the back of the room or only come over to the student at times because, eventually we need to start moving them away from the student and not have them as close to the student as they once were. So, but there's clearly a fade plan in the IEP for what that looks like, how they're going to stand, where they're going to stand, how often they're going to go over to support the student and all of those things. So, but that would be very clearly laid out in the IEP. The next area, the third focus area is compliance. And that really entails the following: the special education policies and procedures and development of the individualized education program or IEP, and all other special education documents. In terms of how we have worked on this area over the past year, we have completed monitorings such as the special education audit, internal record reviews, as well as both informal and formal observations. For next school year, the special education department continues to keep compliance at the forefront by conducting regular observations in classrooms, providing feedback to teachers, along with providing support to teachers before, during, and after IEP meetings with the development of their IEPs or completion of documents, as well as doing random record reviews to assist and support with determining what additional support and professional development is needed for staff. This year, we also did a special education committee, and it was formed to take a closer look at current research and practices in the field of special education. And based on that committee, they made recommendations for actions the special education department should consider moving forward. And Dr. DeVerick is going to share some of the priorities that committee deemed we should look at for this coming school year.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. I'm Lisa DeVerick, principal at Easton High School. And as Ms. Menchez said, it was part of the Special Education Committee. The priorities that were selected by this committee to be the focus for this coming school year were around the idea of scheduling and parent and family collaboration. So the first priority is about scheduling, and the following were suggested. Asking school leaders to consider the strengths of special educators to match the needs, to match those strengths to the needs of the students in the school. This can determine how quickly a student makes progress on their IEP, how well challenges are prevented in terms of social and emotional learning and regulation, and how successful is the implementation of the IEP, not just as it appears on paper. Beginning the scheduling process early would be beneficial, as Ms. Menchez and Dr. Bullock spoke about this, and Mrs. Kane, which allows for proper planning of resources and personnel to properly implement those IEPs. They also suggested that leaders get creative with the master schedule to allow ample time for co-teaching and co-planning. General education and special educators need time dedicated to planning, reviewing data, and discussing students' progress. Teachers need this uninterrupted time to build relationships with one another and to plan a shared responsibility of executing lesson plans. The second priority is about professional learning on relationship building to support families' collaborative efforts at IEP meetings. When families have a strong relationship with their child's special education teacher, trust is developed. Families feel safe to ask questions and are open to learning the process, which is very complicated. They become a true member of the IEP team. And families know their child best, and when they understand the process, they can understand and contribute fully to the decision-making process. And now we'll have Ms. Miller come up.
So my name is Kirsten Miller. I was a fourth grade special ed teacher at Easton Elementary School for a number of years. And I was a part of the special ed committee that met once a month. I attended all of the meetings, and we had really great collaborative discussions. And it was really nice to see. We had parents, we had community members, principals, teachers, gen ed teachers, special ed teachers, all having these conversations centered around really making a school that's inclusive for students. So we did come up, in doing that work, we came up with some things that we think should be investigated during the next upcoming school year. So one of those things that we were thinking was to have different options for hiring teachers. We know that sometimes having full-time teachers can be a difficult thing for some people to accomplish. I mean, I know personally that teachers sometimes have children and they can't meet. They don't want to be a full-time, 40 hours a week teacher, but there are needs for special ed within this community, so possibly looking into having part-time teachers, teachers that could work half-days, just being creative around our teaching practices and our hiring practices so that we can get the best teachers in for our students. We also talked about looking into differentiating planning time based on schedules. So for instance, if a teacher co-plans with 5 teachers, that maybe that teacher gets extra co-planning time, or that person, maybe if you only have 2 teachers to co-plan with, you might get less time, and that maybe there's more collaboration of seeing who could pick up more and less there among grades, that we could help each other out. We also talked about ways to provide more training and coaching to support staff.
who provide special education services to students. So I know there was a lot of talk tonight about instructional assistants and adult assistants, and special ed teachers. Those are all the different people that are a part of providing services to students. We have special education teachers who have caseloads, but then we also have instructional assistants who might not do a one-on-one. We know we were talking a lot about one-on-one adult support, but we also have instructional assistants who are just kind of have a special ed teacher that they work with, so that we have more opportunities to get more adults with our kids. And that if we could increase the training of those people and help support them to learn more about what it is to work with special education students, that could be good. We also talked about hiring and retention of those paraprofessionals to increase their base salary. I can attest that the paraprofessionals that I worked with this past school year were absolutely excellent, and they really had a heart and a passion to be there every single day. But I would hear them often saying that they were struggling to meet their basic needs in the current role that they have. Discuss and determine other roles who could provide special education services and develop what that could look like in practice. And I know we've kind of been in a bubble with our thinking of just a special ed teacher is the only person who can serve special ed students. But we talked in the committee about how we have so many resources in our buildings. We have coaches, we have specialists, and that, those services not that it all falls on the special ed teacher, because, we do know that teacher burnout for special ed teachers is a concern. And that maybe we can just look at things a little bit broader and just keep our eyes open and see what resources we already have in our buildings that could be helpful to us.
I have a question. What's the difference between paraprofessional and an IA?
They're really the same thing.
Okay.
It's two different words, but it's the same.
I just want to chime in. I also participated in the Special Education Committee, and the conversations were fantastic. I've never felt so happy to be a part of a group, just to hear the conversations that were happening. And I'm sorry that Easton Elementary is losing you, Mrs. Miller, but Ms. Bullock is in for a treat.
Yeah, I wanted to echo that also. I really appreciate what the committee proposed here, because we've heard a lot of theory, and I know there's been a lot of professional development on things like universal design, and of course our, more inclusive schools and classrooms. And implementing it is, I think, really challenging. And so I really appreciate those last two pieces of how you took a deeper dive into looking at what creative things can we do? What additional resources do we need that might be within the realm of possibility, given that we aren't the most resource school district? And what out-of-the-box thinking could we do? So really appreciate that.
I'd like to add on to that. I would love it if Mrs. Menchez could meet with Teaching and Learning and both HR and talk about based on those recommendations, what could a staffing plan look like that we could try to fund. Believe it or not, budget cycle is coming right up again, and we're going to have these conversations again. So if we could start having those conversations, I know you have a staffing plan for this year, but to say, based on recommendations, this is what it could look like, this is what a job share could look like, this is what it would cost, this is how it could help, these are the places. But those conversations should start now so that we can get ahead of it when it comes to budget season, so we can speak to it a little bit more thoroughly when we have to argue, which we always do, about why we need these things, but saying this came from the community, this came from the committee, these are the best suggestions, and they're really good ones. They're out of the box, they're not really things we've talked about before. I'm up here saying more IAs, but job sharing is a great idea that we haven't actually talked about that could really have an impact. So I would love that if that came back to us at the start of budget cycle.
Yeah, that's absolutely what we talked about in the special ed committee.
One other question I wanted to ask. When you're looking into what students which students are being placed with which staff members, does it ever come into account that that student maybe had siblings with a prior teacher? Because speaking from my personal experience, when one of my children get matched with a teacher that another student already had, it's super reassuring to me as a parent to have that continuity with the educator. And then not only that, but then the educator also knows that student's background. So just throwing that out there.
Yeah, that's probably more for the schools, but I would assume that they probably look somewhat at that as they're placing kids as much as they can. I mean, you can't, sometimes you can look at those kinds of things just from having been seated at some of the tables where some of these discussions are happening. But yes, I'm sure some of those conversations happen.
I mean, I've been lucky enough to have that happen a couple of times, and it's been fantastic. When I look at my youngest student who has Down syndrome and doesn't tell me a lot about his day, it's super reassuring as a parent for me to already know that teacher and have had a prior relationship with that teacher.
Well, and I know in the special ed committee, we talked about looping up with kids or keeping that teacher in the same grade level. So I think all of those conversations sometimes happen within schools as to which is best too. So, any other questions?
I have a couple questions. I didn't see the word social worker up there. So I know we have them involved.
We do.
So squeeze that in somewhere because I know we were advocating for that this past year more. With the training and the PD, do the teachers get to pick what they want? I've never been clear on that.
So with a lot of these professional development opportunities, the teachers do get to pick if they want to take part in them, because often.
Well, I'm sorry, let me clarify. Do they get to pick like the topic I should have asked?
Sometimes with different professional developments opportunities, there's a menu that's put out.
Okay.
And so they can pick within the menu. And sometimes there's a professional development that comes out that they can sign up for it if they feel like it's a need for them.
And then do you do a survey from the parents at the end of the year for what they thought, questions, needs, blah, 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 supports?
So we typically, 2 parent surveys come out. A parent survey comes out from MSDE at the very end of the year in the spring that they send us, MSDE sends us the results of. And then we send out a survey basically right as school is starting up in the fall. Well, it's really late summer. That we ask parents what types of training, information, types of events that they want to have.
You do an end of the year one?
We haven't done a mid-year one, just because I feel like parents are so inundated. But we do take feedback at our Special Ed Citizens Advisory Committee, which parents can be a part of.
Okay. And then the last thing is, do you guys have time to do, I know, the mental health strain, you guys do take time for?
Absolutely. Yes.
I know that's a loaded question, but.
As much as we can, yes.
I know, as a nurse, dealing with certain patients and what have you, you really, the burnout is real. But we want to make sure that you guys are not just PDing yourself to death, but learning how to zen.
We were doing the Happy Teacher Project for a while. Is that still going on? Is that?
We are no longer contracting with them. That was part of our grant funding that came through. But there are still opportunities, like through our coaching that we did with Anne Arundel Community College, some mindfulness work that goes on in the schools as well.
I was going to say one thing that I wanted to circle back on in the realm of special education, and it was your concern, Ms. Dotson, with summer school. And so we're looking at the data, and I know you had said there were no students with complex needs invited to summer school. And so we talked today, and this is something, you know, going backward in just our clear communication and transparency. So students that were invited to summer school were students, according to our DIBELS data, that fell in the yellow or high red. So yellow is below benchmark, high red is like almost there. So the decision was made, and we met today, of inviting the students, going on the momentum of our K-2 literacy goal, of inviting students that were in the yellow or high red for summer school. So one of the priorities, what we talked about, is moving forward, being able to communicate that, right? Here's our criteria for summer school. We're inviting students based off DIBELS scores that fall between this range and this range, right? That's what we can do moving forward in being transparent and communicating that. Second, I think we are going to continue with the special ed committee, but Ms. Menchez actually had a really great idea of piggybacking it right with CCAC, which is Special Education Citizens Advisory Committee. Therefore, we can have both groups kind of meet together, and that be the platform to say, how can we look at the data, and if summer school or after school programming is going to be developed, have that space be that space to be able to talk about what that programming can look like. We're getting ready to enter budget season, so putting it on the table as to how much money we're going to be talking about and what we want to do with summer programming. I just wanted to bring that back
Okay,
around.
but then if you have students who were in the red and were K-2 literacy and they had special needs, they weren't invited to summer school.
But
So
if-
that was
well-
not made clear.
Well, yeah, but if the students were and had complex needs that fell in that band, we would have provided the support for those students.
That did not happen this year.
So, well, but those students, were they in the grade band or the DIBELS band that was identified? So, And I think moving forward, I mean, we can do a better job of communicating the ranges that we're looking for students that are being invited to summer school and what that programming is going to look like.
Does IDEA, FAPE, and LRE not apply to every day education is offered, not just the 180 days? Was that not going to apply to summer programming?
Well, absolutely, and I think that moving forward, I do want to be clear as to what will be the goals of our summer school planning. You know, what are going to be the goals, what's going to be the data we're going to look at, and what are the outcomes that we want on the back end of that. And I think it's going to be the spaces where we have, you know, the voices in those rooms of CCAC and our special ed committee to talk about what does that look like for us.
All right, so, well, are we,
Before we move on, does anybody have any additional questions? We've asked a lot. Did we get it all out there? Okay. The next thing that we will discuss is the presentation of the special education staffing plan, which will show up under consent agenda. So we're going to discuss this tonight, and then we're going to vote on it under consent agenda. So we're not going to review all of this again on Wednesday. And this is still Mrs. Menchez, I believe, presenting? Okay.
yes. So based on the priorities and the needs of the students that we just talked about, the first recommendation to continue inclusive efforts is to add 2 instructional assistants at Easton Elementary School, 1 at St. Michael's Elementary School, and 1 at Tillman Elementary School.
Are those the new positions that were in the budget already, the 4?
Yes.
The second recommendation is to shift or transfer 1 special education instructional assistant from Easton Elementary School to Easton Middle School for students with specific needs transitioning from Easton Elementary School to Easton Middle School. So I know it seems like we're adding, the reason for the shift is because there are staff who have been working with these students, and because of their specific needs, there's a staff that knows those students, so transferring that person with those students is more beneficial.
And I think we were speaking to that, of having staff being with the students that are familiarity as well with the needs.
With this addition, how many IAs and how many special ed teachers are there at Easton Middle?
I feel like, yeah, it's probably on the chart.
Yeah,
There
it's
is a chart with the
chat
number of
attached with all of
teachers.
I
them.
haven't flipped ahead.
Okay.
But there's not a chart with the number of IAs.
Okay.
And honestly, off the top of my
Just
head, I
teachers,
cannot remember what the number of IAs is going to be once we add these new IAs to the number. I'm pretty sure it exceeds 20 at Easton Elementary. But if you would like the specific number, I can certainly get it to you.
I'm actually more interested in Easton Middle because I feel like this is an area, when you mentioned earlier that we have added a lot of IAs, I think that Easton Middle is an area where we didn't have very many, and we've grown that space. I feel like recently, in the past few years, we have really made a concerted effort to increase interventions and special ed at Easton Middle in particular. So I think this is a great
We've
move.
also added a couple of teachers at Easton Middle. I want to say there will be 3 or 4 instructional assistants at Easton Middle School.
We just hire a new reading coach for Easton Middle School, and would that reading coach not also sometimes work with special ed students who need reading interventions?
Yeah,
They
but
would,
if you're
yeah.
talking about 20 IAs at Easton Elementary and 3 or 4 at Easton Middle, similar, I mean, Easton Elementary is bigger, but like, I think my point is that this one person could have a huge impact, which is important.
I think also,
They're
I'm
also, go ahead.
I'm just going to say, I was thinking also about the natural proportionality that you talked about earlier, and how, I think at Easton Middle School, there has been some consideration in the past of, okay, let's have a special ed teacher in this classroom so these teachers can co-teach. It's a general education classroom, and let's maybe put English language learners in this classroom where there can be specific language support. And so if we're changing that all up and doing this proportionality, do we have enough staffing to cover all of those different types of needs then in all classrooms?
At Easton Middle?
Yes, anywhere else really, but Easton Middle in particular, because it seems like, relatively speaking, we have less support there at this point.
So based on current students' IEPs, yes, we have enough staff to cover all of students' IEPs at the various schools. I think the reason that you currently have more need for adult support at the elementary level is that's where students are currently still learning how to engage, become an independent learner, and they just need more adult support at those ages and grades. Whereas once they get to middle and high school, you don't have as much need for an adult support at that time. Even for students with more significant needs, they tend to learn a lot more of those skills by that age and grade, even if they needed adult support when they were younger. We just find they don't need somebody walking them, transitioning them in the hallway like they did when they were younger. They can do it without that adult support. Or if they need adult support, they can do it as a whole class. They don't need the level of adult support that they needed when they were in elementary.
I think that might be true for certain types of, and I won't have the language right, but, occupational type of development issues, like being able to transition and walk between classes. But I think when we think back on the earlier information that we saw on student test scores, both in our general education class and special ed, it seems like at the middle school level, we still have a lot of need for support.
Yes, I think that we also, at the middle and high school, as students are in those grades, We still have students who are receiving services outside of the general ed classroom who have more significant needs. And, you know, can they be in the general ed classroom? I don't know, because I'm not sitting in those IEP team meetings, but it is possible that as the curriculum gets more complicated and more difficult and more rigorous, that they find it, and IEP teams feel that it's less, they're less able to be in those general ed spaces like they were when they were younger. And so they tend to be, there are some students that tend to be in the self-contained setting a little bit more than when they were 5 years old and 6 years old. Any other questions?
I want to say thank you for providing the chart that has the students and the teachers and the hours. I've been asking for this for a long time, and this is exactly what I was looking for. So I'm just really appreciative that we got here. It does raise some questions about, as I'm looking through the division of number of teachers for number of students who qualify, the number of hours that they need. I don't want to point any fingers to any specific schools, but can you speak to why some of these might look disproportionate, why some schools may have more students and more hours but fewer teachers? Just kind of what was part of the process in deciding who gets who and how many, other than the specific hours and students in front of us?
Who gets, like
who gets 6 teachers versus who gets 4 teachers, and why, you know?
So we look at the number of students that are in that building, as well as how many hours they're serving. So sometimes there might be one school that's serving a lot of hours, whereas there's another school that's not serving a lot of hours. So you have to look at both the environments, the number of hours, as well as the caseload of students.
Sure, which is why I've been asking to see hours in the past, but I'm just wondering, in my perusal, it doesn't look like an obvious, are there other factors aside from number in the caseload and number of hours, or I feel like I'm missing
There's
something.
also not instructional assistants included on there. So there could be a school that has the support of instructional assistants that another building doesn't have, that's supporting hours.
We will vote on this on Wednesday under consent agenda. So if anybody had more questions, or if anybody has questions this evening, we can ask them then. Everybody's looking.
I want
Give
to
us just
say
a minute.
thank you for answering our many questions.
No problem. Do you want me to advance to the next slide?
I have one other question. Would the gifted and talented program fall under special ed? That's different.
And for the record, in the past, our gifted and talented population has also been about 10% of our students. Okay. Any lingering questions? Again, if you have questions about the staffing plan, this is in consent agenda. You can ask it again on Wednesday. It is slated to be voted in consent, but we can always pull it out and talk about it more. Or if Ms. Strawberry has questions, we can do that. Otherwise, that was the last thing on the agenda for this evening. So we will go ahead and end this meeting, and I will see you all back here on Wednesday. Thanks so much for being here, everybody.